I left in December 1964, and the reason I left was, well, I just wanted to do something different. I felt I'd gone as far as I could in the Air Force, and I'd always wanted to go nursing, so that was why I applied to go nursing.
I would have liked to have served longer, but in those days I was engaged and you couldn't stay in the service if you were married, so there was no point signing up for any further time.
All the girls were not happy about the fact that we had to get out to get married, but there wasn't any rules and regulations that, and you've been so instilled with the rules and regulations, you just did it, and that was it. But now, of course, they stay and they have children and all.
There weren't many female officers at all, and they stayed. You see, the opportunity for promotion would have been very limited, because there was one wing officer, and there were 2 squadron officers, and then the rest were flight officers or section officers. So there was no way for you to go, once you become a flight officer, to wait for the others to, because there was no chance of them at that age marrying, I wouldn't think. And of course they had to get out if they married, and so that was it. Your chance of promotion from then on was very limited.
And as you've seen by our discharge, you could be a thief or murderer or whatever, the way they write it up, but it's just they didn't want married women in the service at that time.
I felt sad in some ways, because you were losing, once you decide to leave, you're cut off then completely. You know, there was nothing there for you anymore. So I just left, and I was just looking forward to a new area, new challenge. I think I've always been one who likes challenges.
Yeah, you miss having all those people around you that you saw every day and all the rest of it. But as you say, you're married, and being in a strange place, which we were, and my husband deserted me the next day to go to work. I had to find my own way and learn the lingo up there. I couldn't go and get a loaf of bread. They didn't know what that meant, and they didn't know what a Dixie was, which was the ice cream. So I had to learn a new language up there, and then I ended up, after we'd been there for about 3 months or something, I ended up getting a job because the expense of their rental was excessive. So I had to get a job up there, and I worked for Hardy's Hardware and became a telephonist receptionist. Hardy's call girls, as we used to call ourselves.
It would have been 1967 when I first started the business. At that time I'd been working for an accountant, and he suggested then that I should form a business because of the tax advantages that there was. But it was a funny thing, because my husband said I couldn't have a name in the business with Lumsden in it, because he didn't know that it was quite right. So that's why I formed a name with James in it, because he didn't. Men were very, not very supportive in those days. You were still under your husband's control a lot still, if you allowed it to be. But it never stopped me doing what I wanted to do. He always encouraged me mostly in what I wanted to do.
I'd started a side business of dressmaking. I sewed for a whole lot of the WRAAF. I did a lot of their wedding dresses and all sorts of things. And on the base, the WRAAF officer let me use one of the rooms that was mine that I did dressmaking in. And the fellow who was doing the filming in the theatre, he did a sign for me, and it was the Marguerite salon. And I stayed there, working there, until I was married. And we got married. I left in September, and we were married in the following February.
As I said, she was a seamstress, so she'd make clothing for you at a reasonable price, and we just sort of stayed friends when she came to live in Werribee after she married. And we just sort of kept the friendship up. As I said, it's once again, it's one of those things, if I haven't seen her for a while, it's like you haven't been away from each other. It's the camaraderie. It's something that is peculiar, really, possibly to kids who go to boarding school, but it's very prominent with service personnel. And if you ever went to a reunion, an interstate reunion, you'd know what I mean. The looks on the people's faces when they catch up with someone they haven't seen for maybe 10 years or something, it's something to behold.
I enjoy going along to the reunions, although being an officer, you're never one of the girls, but still, you've still got common knowledge of what happened and the events that happened at that time. And I think it's very interesting to catch up and see them, and as they go through life.
Well, the first reunion was about 20-something years after we were married, and it was the first time in all that time that I had a day off and my husband stayed home and minded the children. That's how things were then. And there was a great crowd there. It was just amazing catching up with people, and a lot we hadn't seen for I don't know how long. Officers and ordinary people, and just all being there together. And then I remember the 2002 reunion, and that was at Werribee RSL, and there was a whack of a crowd there too. For in later years, meeting people to have a meal in an RSL or somewhere. Not as many people, and I had to miss a few for quite a few years that they weren't happening very much. But it's good to catch up with people, but I find now there aren't too many people back in my generation, and they're people who joined up after me, and it's quite interesting actually, yeah. I feel like an old matriarch.
My daughter Jenny is now 52, and she joined the Air Training Corps at about 17, 18. She was one of the first females to join the Air Training Corps at Frognal, and she then became interested in the Air Force. Although she retains her nursing and has become a nursing, she now works as a nurse at the Royal Melbourne Hospital in intensive care, but she retained her interest in the Air Force and has become a reservist and has now risen to the rank of Air Commodore. She's now Director General, Health Services, Reserve. I think very important to see women in roles like that, how they can make a success of their lives by being in the Air Force, or whatever they do.
Particularly if you were a male, you could learn a trade. Females, no, you went in, with the exception of being a medical orderly, which they would train you to do that. Most of it, we went in and worked as our designated whatever we were in civvy life. But no, I think the service is a great life. The camaraderie, the esprit de corps, just being able to get on with other people, and it's just a fantastic life.
I knew everything would be different and everything would be new. I had no idea what it would be like, but I loved it. I mean, my time in the Air Force was fantastic. It really was, because meeting up with a whole lot of people as an adult and making friends, and some of those people are still friends, they've lasted through the years. But then it was really interesting too, because here we were, it was almost like going to school again, because by the time you did your rookies, and with all the marching and with all the the drilling and the learning, going to school virtually, learning everything and learning that through hardship to the stars. Well, that's what my father always said. Dream on was the kind of thing. Always aim for the highest kind of thing, and I think that's what it was. It was aiming for something that was really good.
Well, I think the thing that has stayed with me is the fact that the Air Force believed in me and gave me a chance to be myself and to develop into the person I've become. And I think I've become a better person from being in the Air Force.